Hello, everybody. I am Dhivya Balasubramanian. I know, just go by Dhivya or Divs. And I'm along with a huge passion for cybersecurity, specifically identity and access. And I get the privilege of doing what I love day in and day out as a cybersecurity leader at Southwest Airlines. Well, before we start, a couple of disclaimers. We are here out of our own personal interest and not representing that of our organization. Second, this is a talk about non-human identities, and we would love to cater to a broad spectrum, a broad skills of people. So we're going to start with very, very foundational concepts. So this is a more really beginner-friendly session. So if you are a person that does CI/CD in your sleep, you kind of, know the ins and outs, you may feel like it's Shakespeare watching Miss Rachel on YouTube. Go A for apple. So just another reminder, just to make sure you're still in the right room, this is a foundational course about DevOps, CI/CD, and non-human identities. So just want to make sure you're in the right room. Nobody walked out. Well, that's awesome. Let's get started. All right. The agenda, the first 30 minutes, we're going to cover foundational concepts of what is DevOps, what is CI/CD, and then we will drill this further into just the CI/CD part, where we will talk about non-human identities, and then we will talk about how it gets exploited in the wild, about the breaches that happen every day. And hopefully, by the end of 30 minutes, I'll scare you enough to listen to him talk about how do you secure this? How do we stay safe, right? So that's going to be what your next hour is going to look like. And then finally to Q&A. Over the recent years, everywhere I turn, anybody I talk to, it just feels like CI/CD has become the new normal, right? Everybody is kind of using it in one form or the other. And I hear people brag about how transformative it has been. During one of my lunches with one of my good friends, we had a pretty intense conversation about this topic. And I went, I'd love a good transformation. Yeah, I should hire a DevOps engineer too. She looked at me and goes, okay, what problem are you trying to solve with DevOps? I kind of went speechless. I'm telling you, my husband would have enjoyed or paid money to watch me go speechless in the middle of an intense conversation. That never happens. That wasn't his lucky day though. But I was speechless, not because I didn't know what problem I had. Of course I knew what problem I had. I wanted less friction between cybersecurity teams and the rest of the company, right? And I wanted things to go smoothly. I wanted less manual work, more automation. But is DevOps a solution? Beyond all of these buzzwords, what does DevOps actually mean? So if I run a CI/CD pipeline, does it mean I'm DevOps? I actually had no clue. So I started my research. Like any good student, I went straight to ChatGPT and other Gen AI tools. And I also used search engines. I know. Don't judge me, okay? I'm still a little old school. But somewhere between ChatGPT patronizing me, saying, that's exactly the kind of question you should be asking for. I know ChatGPT, you're listening, but no offense. And me taking ChatGPT responses and checking with Google. Hey, is that guy telling me the truth? Or is he just railroading me, right? Somewhere between this world, I figured I need a better way to picture this in my head, And I'm a person that learns better with analogies anyhow. So I ended up picking that's something that's common for hopefully all of us. Restaurants. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that restaurants are not just a place that serves food. It's a system of coordination, speed, quality, and in surprisingly many ways, it made me feel more relatable to DevOps and CI/CD. Let's say you go to your favorite restaurant, you order your favorite food. What happens in that kitchen is actually a very structured workflow. The order gets placed in the system. Someone's, getting all the ingredients ready. The chef is preparing the food and hopefully checks it for taste. The dish gets plated and it's ready and inspected. The server takes the food and delivers it to your table. That box area, that's CI/CD. It's automatable, it's repeatable. And once your dish is out of the kitchen, the CI/CD is done. But let's zoom out, because the kitchen is obviously not the entire restaurant, right? The restaurant is much more than that. Restaurants include things like the menu design, which is like our product decisions. It also includes hiring the right people, the right chefs, the right servers, managers. That's like our org design. It also involves the fact that all of these people that we just hired kind of work well together, the cross-functional team collaboration. It also includes handling customer complaints, like an incident response. It also includes consistently monitoring the food for its quality, that's your observability. Because if you go into the restaurant one day, the food's amazing. The next day you go, it's like, meh. And the next day it's like, I don't know what dish this is. Well, the probability of you going back to that restaurant has declined. It also includes health and security standards, right? That's just like security and compliance. So if one upsets stomach after a meal, your probability dropped to near zero of going back to that place. If you notice something, most of what I just said involves more than just usage of tools. It has a shared sense of ownership instead of handoffs. It's accountability as a whole instead of blame. Let's say the kitchen messes up, right? Your servers, the managers there, they're not just going to stand back and say, that's that guy's problem, not mine. It's not going to help anybody. They all come together. They fix it together. That mindset shift of shared ownership for a great customer experience, that's DevOps. Once it works beautifully together, you get a great customer experience. If it doesn't, no amount of automation is going to help fix that. DevOps is not about speeding up the kitchen. It's about aligning the restaurant to deliver value. And if I keep talking about food, the smell of pizza, they talk about food, I will walk out of my own session. So, before I do that, let me switch to something that is less interesting than food. Work. Well, as engineers, right? All of you write code day in, day out. Instead of checking stuff in at the end of your sprint, or whenever your PM bugs you, like, hey, I need that code right now, right? Just continuously check it every day. Make sure that your code is constantly tested and integrated multiple times a day. That's continuous integration. And as a team, if all of you all are working together in a shared code base, just make sure that that code base is continuously tested, checked for security, and it's always in a deployable state. Not deployed, deployable state. That is continuous delivery. The ultimate goal of most organizations, most engineers, is continuously being able to deploy the production without the need for human intervention. That is continuous deployment. And DevOps is kind of the foundation. It runs like all over. It's an operating model that aligns people, processes, and technology to enable continuous value delivery through automation, measurement, and cross-functional ownership. Well, today, CI/CD has become the backbone of almost all organizations, right? But was that the case like 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago? Well, some of you in this room were like, yo, I wasn't even born 30 years ago. What are you talking about? Well, yeah, life wasn't the same 30 years ago. In order to truly appreciate what you have today, let's take some steps back in time and look at all the stepping stones that helped us get to where we are today. All right. How many of you all in this room have installed or upgraded software using floppy disks or CI/CD? Use CDs. Thank you. I'm so glad I'm not alone in this room. I was so scared to ask this question, hoping I'll be the only one doing that. And everybody's like, what's a floppy disk? So thank you for not making me feel alone. Oh, those good old days of agile. Not agile, waterfall, man. The long planning, the even longer documentation that people barely read or write, the big bang releases, that was a whole different lifestyle. Well, I'm so glad, we're not doing that anymore. But in the early 90s, Grady Booch coined the term continuous integration. He meant do small bang races, guys. Don't wait for a big bang. But that term did not pick up much speed until extreme programming came and said, and I don't know why they called it that, but it felt a little extreme probably at that time. It said, integrate early, integrate multiple times a day, and run automated tests. 2000s came, thank God for Agile. The way that we delivered started changing, but the friction between development teams and operations teams were still there. In 2007, a Belgian engineer called Patrick Dhivya, he was working on a large data center migration project. And he felt the obvious friction between development teams and operations teams. As in, the developers will write the code, right? They'll ship it to the ops team. Ops team as in like our system admins, network administrators, database administrators. They will ship it over, for example. And then let's say they deploy it. It doesn't work. Operations team says, your code's bad. Developers like, your infrastructure sucks. So that divide was getting so obvious. It wasn't helpful for anybody, right? We are all working to the same goal. What's the point in just like blame gaming? So Patrick really wanted to bring these two worlds together and help reduce the friction. But that idea wasn't popular back then. He did not get much traction. In the year 2008, in Agile conference in Toronto, Andrew Schaefer, he proposed a topic called Agile infrastructure under something called birds of feather. Those are kind of concepts where, you propose an idea, people with similar minds, they come, they talk about it, right? Of course, Patrick was excited. He showed up, and he was the only person to show up. As in literally the only person, because Andrew didn't show up himself. He got so much negative feedback for his topic that he ended up canceling his own session. My God. But Patrick caught up with Andrew in the hallway, and their discussions led them to form the Agile Systems Administrators Global Group. Still, not much traction around, DevOps yet. And in 2009, at a Velocity conference, John Alsbaugh and Paul Hammond, they presented the famous 10 plus deploys a day, Dev and Ops cooperation and Flickr. That was exactly what Patrick was looking for. He was so excited about his idea coming to life as Flickr. Motivated by that talk, he actually, in Belgium, formed his own conference called DevOps Days. Pretty sure some of you are familiar with DevOps Days. It's still running, but that's where it started. People from around the world came for this conference. And that's when the grassroots movements of DevOps actually started. This group that came together, they met back, and they continued the conversations in Twitter because of the hashtag limits. The word DevOps Days hashtag went to hashtag DevOps. And that's how, all of this evolved. While these concepts were going on this side, the other side, CI/CD, tools were starting to evolve. In 2001, the first known CI tool, Cruise Control, came into existence. And then came Jenkins and others. Unlike for CI, there was no official CD tool because most of these existing CI tools, they were just extended to allow CD capabilities. But the first known CD native tool was GoCD. And in the same era, a lot of more tools came into existence like Chef, Puppet, and so on. 2010 era. That is when the book Continuous Delivery was released, which gave developers a blueprint to make CI/CD scalable and operable. In 2011, Gartner's Cameron Hayes, he predicted that by 2015, a lot of organizations will start adopting DevOps. In 2030, the research group called DORA was formed. Today, they are part of Google Cloud, and they publish DORA metrics. So if anybody in DevOps, you're pretty familiar with DORA metrics. It makes DevOps measurable. You can't just say hey, it's great, it's going to work. If you don't measure it, nobody's going to buy it. So DORA metrics made DevOps actually measurable. Same year came the book called Phoenix Project, which is still very popular. And that book, if you haven't read it, I would recommend you all to read it. That made DevOps applicable for executives, for leadership, because it showed how much the flow of work is important for an organization. Then 2010 was an era which was very transformative technology-wise. As you all know, cloud came in, right? As much as all of these concepts were coming together around this time, the explosion of cloud and containers made a lot of these things actually possible. Really large organizations like Amazon, Netflix, and all of them, they were very early adopters of Suite, I believe. But around this time, a lot more organizations actually started following Suite. And here we are. So what's next? Well, I managed to go 20 minutes without talking about AI. Yes, that should be a first. But I'm going to at least the security front, right? We've definitely shifted a lot of security left to DevSecOps, to SEAs, SBOMs, SAST, DAST. We have definitely introduced a lot of security into our pipelines. As for AI, we have a lot of things are coming up. MLOps, AIOps, DevOps, DevSecOps. So many things that I am very excited to see where AI is going to, or how AI is going to shape our future. Hopefully the last time I used that word today. Well, this is source credit for James Bowman, who put this together quite a few years ago. But this is just a rough idea of how many tools exist in the DevOps landscape. So, for a lot of years, we have paid a lot of attention to protecting human identities, right? Most of the organizations today have evolved to use passkeys, FIDO-based MFA, just make sure that humans, act more mature. But in that process, we ended up generating tag tokens, like personal access tokens, that just never expire. Mm-hmm. That's like locking the front door, adding so many layers of security at the side door and leaving your back door and windows open. Mm-hmm. That's not secure. And the more you do it, your attack surface expands exponentially. So what we want to do next is take a look at how these NHIs get exploited in the wild. Or, before that, let's just look at what these NHIs are before exploiting them. So, in order to keep a kitchen running, you need one or two chefs, right? In order to keep your pipelines running in an automated fashion, you should keep the chefs out, as in the humans out of the loop. And you need to bring in this invisible workforce. This invisible workforce is everywhere. It's in your build stage, it's in your test stage, it's in your deploy stage, it's everywhere. And if you haven't done it right, sometimes this workforce runs with admin privileges, even when it's not needed to. And there's barely anybody monitoring this workforce, right? And there's barely a sense of clear ownership for this. So, what is this invisible workforce? Well, some call this non-human identities. Some call this machine or workforce identities. I remember when I was talking to my preteen nephew about it, when I said non-human and I showed this picture, I was like, it's non-human. Why don't you have a cat and a dog up there? Well, great question. I might, the day it starts coding and deploying to production, I may put that up here, but not yet. So that's why this term, non-human, may be a little controversial, but we're going to ignore the name for once and just focus on the issue at hand, because the problem and the concerns that we all have around this space is real, irrespective of what we call it, right? And by no means that this is the list of non-human identities, this is just a list. For some of you all that may not be familiar with whatever's up here, we'll just cover a couple of it pretty briefly, and then do pay attention, because some of this is going to be exploited in a breach that we will cover next. First, let's take API case. Yeah, let's say you are a developer of an API. It's providing such awesome information. Everybody else, we in the room, we really like what our API is providing for us, and so we want to consume her API programmatically. So what she's going to do is generate an API key and give it one per app. Using that key, she will now be able to track which of our applications are calling her and also throttle limits, that way I don't end up launching a DDoS attack on her API, right? You can think of API keys like your library cards, if you will. You get a library card and it's going to stay there with you. It doesn't expire until you cancel it or you end up never returning the books and the library suspends it for you. I can neither confirm or deny if that's happened to me, but that's your API keys. Tokens, on the other hand, they are like your movie ticket, right? It expires right after the short. For example, NPM tokens, PAT tokens, OAuth OIDC tokens, JOT token, the numeral token, just keeps going. But tokens basically give you temporary access for people or processes. A token can represent a user identity. For example, personal access tokens. That enumerates the privileges of the user to whom it's issued for. A token can also represent a non-human identity like your services, your pipelines, your pods, so on. Two things I want you to keep in mind when I use tokens. Please do not take a token issued for a person and stuff it into your pipeline. That's a big no. Because that token is going to probably run with more permissions than it actually needs. Second, do not make your tokens static, long-lived, or broadly scoped because it's convenient. If you do so, then it's just an API key by another name. What's the point? Third, service accounts. So just like, we all have our unique identities, right? That's why if we go file, they know like, hey, you, ID number 123, you cooked it up. So just like that, we need an identity to figure out what service did what. So identities of service accounts, identities of, this non-human machines or workloads, they are called service identities. Next. So, like I said, if we haven't paid close attention to all of these paths, or any of these non-human identities, the probability of it getting exploited in the wild is so real. So in the next few minutes, we're going to look at some real-world incidents that have happened because of this non-human identity attacks. What's listed here is just some of the breaches that have happened in non-human identities, specifically in the CI/CD pipeline. And I really wish I can go into details of all of these for your awareness. But for your sanity, I'm going to just become one. So we will focus on the NPM attack in this session. And in this slide, we've only shown the 2018 one. But the next, we're going to see how often NPM is being compromised. But before I go deeper, for people who may not be familiar with what is this NPM thing? Well, developers never write every single line of code from scratch, right? We are always going to depend on an external package to help us, do the job. For JavaScript developers, NPM, Node Package Manager, is the repository that holds all of these packages. I think even as of 3 years ago, it had about 2.1 million packages, making this the world's largest software registry. What would go wrong with that? Well, as you can see, it becomes the most favorite target for supply chain attacks. Again, this is probably not exhaustive list. We've already not called out the singularity or the Quicks compromise, but we will focus only on the most recent attack for this session. Well, one more audience question. Any sci-fi movie addicts like me? Oh, good. How many of you all watched Dunes? Okay, awesome. Well, for those of you all who haven't, that will be your most important takeaway from the session. Watch Dunes if sci-fi interests you. And it has an IMDb rating of 8 out of 10. Yeah, if you go watch it, you don't like it, don't blame just me. Well, there are more people to play. Right, so for those of you all that have watched this movie, you know what a shy halot is. That's a desert worm, not a pretty little one. As of September 2025, our software world, we have our own version of this shy halot worm. So, what is this? This is a self-replicating malware that targets NPM packages. Its selection of targets is so strategic, it aims for the highest, almost heavily used NPM packages to kind of cause maximum damage. Yeah. For the sake of this conversation, we're actually going to really deep dive into the specific hack. And for this conversation, I'm going to pretend that I'm the hacker. Trust me, I'm definitely not. See, no black hoodie. And I'm from Texas. I don't live in the basement. So you're safe. Just to make it more easily relatable, we'll just do a role play so that it will be easier for me to explain. Hopefully, easier for you to understand. All right, so here goes. Let's say all these guys up front are, developers of some NPM packages that is most widely used. What I'm going to do, I'm going to compromise all of your accounts. Now I am you. Everybody else in this room, you guys are JavaScript developers relying on their packages. And you have auto install of dependencies enabled in your developer machines or in your CI/CD. Yeah? So I take their package, I unpackage it, put in my malicious script package, upload to the repo. You all have graciously done an auto install. So you're going to pull in my tainted package and the installation begins. As soon as the installation begins, my malicious post-install script is going to kick off. And what's that going to do? Well, you've heard me talking about the non-human identities a few minutes ago, right? That's my target. That's what I'm after. So I'm going to scan your repos and look for environment variables and configuration files that has NPM tokens, GitHub tokens, your credentials, anything and everything. And I've also deployed TruffleHawk, the legit secret scanning tool for me to get as many secrets as I can. While in the process of gathering these secrets, I don't trust that all of y'all have all legit tokens. Maybe you have a token, you just never bothered to clean it up after you used it once. So while I'm gathering your tokens, I validate if what I'm gathering has publish or push privileges. I only need things that work. So that is how I'm going to gather all the valid credentials from you. So while I'm in the process of gathering this information, if I come across, let's say a GitHub personal access token, a bad token, right? Here's what I'm going to do. As I said before, that token enumerates the permissions of the user that's issued for. Okay? So let's say you are a user of their packages, right? So you ended up installing this package of mine. So now I have your token. You as a user, you've installed this in one of your repos, but you have access to 200 other repos. I have your token. You have 200 other repos for me. I'm going to iterate through all of your other repos. And in all of those 199 repos, I'm going to install my malicious workflow, which get triggers on push. So once somebody pushes something to those other repos, my script's going to kick off. It's going to exfiltrate all the secrets from that repo, and it will publish it to a webhook.site. It's kind of like a desktop location for me to come and get your secrets later. See how I traverse through your environment using your non-human identity? So be careful about that. Second, as I'm doing the scan, if I come across an NPM token, that means you are not just a user of somebody's package. You are a publisher of more packages. Yay for me. I'm going to take a look at all of those packages that you are a publisher of, and I'm going to sort them by the most highly downloaded ones. You may have a package that nobody uses. That's going to be of use for me. I will sort it, and I will take the ones that's most often downloaded. I'll take that package, put in my script, repackage, upload. And that's exactly why this was called a verb. That's how you kind of move to the environment and end up inserting more NPM packages. So since I've gathered all of this information, I need access to this, right? So I am going to create a repo, a public repo in your account, call it Shai-Hulud1. Take all these secrets I harvested from you, put them in a base64 encoded file, JSON file, and put that in the repo. So now I have access to all of the secrets from all of your repos. Well, you found me, you stumped me, that September 2025 was done, but this is November, and I'm back again. Let me go back here. Well, this time, what are they after? Same thing, your secrets. Unlike some phones giving version enhancements, I've actually really have some enhancements in my version too. So as and when I am scanning for your secrets, this time I'm going to deploy an official SDK, your cloud provider's official SDK, right? So if I find a valid cloud credential that you have, I'm going to use that credential. I'm going to look at all your secrets manager tools, the stuff where you think your secrets are safe. So I'm going to scan that and extract more secrets from AWS, from Azure, from GCP. I'm going to extract all of those secrets. So now I'm sitting on more secrets than before. What I'm going to do? Similar to last time, take all these secrets, create a public repo in your account, but this time I'm going to name it with a random UUID, but the description shall one pollute the second coming. So this time I also have like 3 more enhancements. 1, cross-victim exfiltration. If the token I have for your account is no longer working, I'm sitting on a treasure trove of more tokens, right? I'm going to take that and attempt to see if any of that works for you. Second, I'm going to install a backdoor because sometimes, this can't be like a one and done thing, right? So I'm going to install a backdoor. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to inject a GitHub Actions workflow called discussions.yaml in your repository. What that's going to do is going to install a self-hosted runner in your machine, right? So whenever I open a discussion in your repo, this will initiate that self-hosted runner to kick off. And now I can make that runner do what I want. So I control what command that executes. You guys have not found much evidence of me using this backdoor, but be aware. Third thing, this time, if I did not find a GitHub token or an NPM token, I'm going to turn into Hulk and destroy your repositories. I know, nice of me, but that's what happened. Well, again, you all found me and you stopped me. But by the time you got to me, I got to about 25,000 repositories. And I'm still sitting on all of those secrets that I've harvested from you guys. So if you haven't listened to the good guys and taken the action to rotate these secrets or do your reset, then time will tell what's next. Yeah, end of roleplay, back to real life. I don't know about you guys, but when this came, it was mighty scary, at least for me. This is just a whole nother level, right? Because it's not just us telling that, identity, please protect your identities. So many industry reports like the Verizon DBI report, Palo Alto report, identity is the most common initial attack vector. Not just humans, also not humans. And if you're wondering, what's the big deal? We've done so much to protect human identities. You're saying this is not human identity. Why don't you just apply the same concepts for this? What's the big deal? Well, I'm so glad you asked. That's what we're going to cover next. Oh, well, this is just a screenshot from posted by Guardian as to how much got exploited in the second attack. So if you have a personal access token, please rethink your strategy. All right. Well, traditional IAM, I would think it to be covered under like 4 broad pillars, yeah? First up, directory services. In most organizations, to manage us poor humans, there's almost always a centralized repository, right? Like your HR system. You get hired, your information gets put into a central system, and that same process is repeated for every person that gets hired. For non-human identities, we fail right there. It is possible, just not in the same vein as what we've been thinking about for traditional identities. Second pillar, identity governance and administration. Again, when people join the company, right, there's something called a joiner, leaver, mover process. What happens when you join? What happens when you move? What happens when you leave? There's a pretty clearly defined process to handle people. And we also have periodic access reviews that people use to make sure that you still have the access that you need. For example, if I have 10 people on a team, right? So periodically, I'll do an access review to make sure that they have the right access. Nothing more, nothing less. Painful, very painful, but doable. Now imagine if they asked me to do that for 500 non-human identities periodically. Well, I'll either periodically need a double paycheck or I'll quit before I use my mind. Definitely. It's not practical or scalable to apply the exact same concepts that we've done for humans for non-human too, right? Third pillar of IAM, access management, right? As humans, it feels so weird constantly referring to us as humans, but let's just keep going. As people, we all log into a UI, right? And most organizations, we just slap SSO or MFA on top of it to protect people from logging in. How's your inner type going to SSO or MFA? For all I know, in the future it may, but at least not yet, right? Fourth pillar, privileged access management. And that is for protecting your like highly sensitive, highly superpowered users. But most of traditional PALs have been secret centric rather than identity centric. Yep. Well, I have been nothing but a doomsday girl in this conversation so far. After giving you the foundation, I said, oh my God, there are potentially non-human identities that you did not know existed, and hackers could exploit them 10 ways from Sunday. And you're doomed. What a buzzkill. Well, but our industry definitely has a lot of amazing smart people who have built incredible defenses against these attacks. So I'm going to let the smart one on the stage take over and bring back hope and light into this conversation that I've successfully killed so far. All right, over to you, Vikas. Technical limitations, and you're going to have the mic on. Like this.
All right. Hello again, everyone. Well, thanks, Dhivya, for setting the context and the ground here. I always like to talk after Dhivya because she sets the ground and takes most of the time, so I have very little time.
See what I have to deal with every day? Or what he has to deal with every day?
All right. So, as Dhivya mentioned earlier, so we plan to do this for a very beginner level, right? So we wanted to pick GitLab as a CI/CD tool here and show it to everyone, like what CI/CD is on a high level, and the PAT tokens that Dhivya was talking about, and where exactly we create them, and how it can be used in a good way and also in a bad way, right? So firstly, for anyone who haven't seen GitLab, so here it is. This is GitLab for you, one of the CI/CD tools. And I had a demo version for now, but when you have this in enterprise, you generally have a login before this, you have a SSO page, that's how you log in, and you have roles tied to it. And yeah, you make sure what repo or what top level group you should be part of, and that's how you get into this. So once you get into this, this is exactly where everything happens. The CI, the CD, all of it, your code goes in here, your deployments, and everything would live in this repo, right? So what I would like to show quickly is when you go to your profile, as you log into this app, and when you go to your profile, we had like PAT tokens reference that we had earlier, right? So there are different ways you could use to connect to GitLab APIs via either PAT tokens or SSH. For this demo, we'll be using PAT token as an example, and we'll be generating one. And as you can see here, as the permissions that you have, whenever you generate the PAT token, you would literally have access or ability to create the scopes, right? So just be mindful, whenever you create these PAT tokens, you could literally have any scope, and GitLab wouldn't allow you to retrieve the PAT token once. So it would force you to either store it somewhere or, right? Make sure you guys store it in a secure way, like either secret vault or somewhere. Do not save it in a notepad, Teams message, or Slack. We'll get to it what happens in case if you do so. All right. So for this demo, I have used a quick example of a Hello World application that you can deploy through CI/CD. And we have two ways that we have built the YAML file here, right? So one is through a way where you have your application token or API key stored, like through development environment. As a developers, when we test, we always tend to use secrets locally, right? And we tend to accidentally push those, right? So what happens is when you have these secrets stored locally and when you push it, like, and deploy this through CI/CD, the logs and the commit history, everything would have your secret exposed in it. This technically like is an API key which we are exposing and which is vulnerable. So what we recommend here is try to limit the usage of secrets and go through the OIDC way of implementation, which is like generating your ID tokens or access tokens and using it for a token exchange for your API endpoints. So you could either rely on your IDP to generate those tokens, or Git has ability to give you OIDC tokens now. So you could use those, which would have a user context. And you could pass those to your next APIs and still pertain the user context in it and propagate it to your next hop. So you know where exactly the request is coming from, right? So you have both the agent context and the user context. So wherever you can, just make sure to eliminate the static secrets and use OIDC. And yeah. So this example shows like how you can have your IDP integrated into your pipelines, right? So you could have these integrations, and as you deploy, right? In the previous example, we have seen what happens when you have a static key. And now with a short-lived OIDC token, all they could see is a token which is short-lived. Even in the worst case of an exposure, it would just expose for the type short lifetime of that particular token. Right, so this is the ways that we could deploy. And moving back to the example I was saying, when you have generated your PAT tokens and you have accidentally stored it into a text file, in a repo, and you have accidentally committed. Now that's has been pushed, and as you see here, like you have pushed your PAT token into your repo. Now I would like to quickly show, like as we have created PAT token earlier, what would this mean, like, right? So let me quickly run some commands and show what these PAT tokens can expose and cause, right? So the very first thing is like you could literally be able to clone the whole repo using just that single PAT token, right? That's the first thing, like so that would be the first thing any attacker would like to know, to read what exactly is in the repo, right? So, well, technically you now exposed a PAT token in your repo, and attacker has got hold of it. All he would have to run is a git clone using your PAT token, and that would technically give him access and would be able to download using that PAT token, right? And now let's try to see. Let's do an ls and navigate to that. Repo and do an ls. Now you can see whatever you have on your repo is now in this attacker's local machine, right? That's the very first thing. You might think, what's a big deal? They can just see the code, not push anything. But here's the thing. If you have generated that PAT token with right access, or the stuff you never intended to, right? So let's see quickly on like what are the permissions this PAT token could do. It could literally connect your Git APIs and do a curl command, do a push, read, everything. Technically, it could like literally do stuff that you never intended or wanted the attackers to do, right? So, thanks. Yeah. So one of this example is like the command that I ran would give them the ability. It's a screen full, so there. So this would give them the ability to see the whole repo, right? It would give them all the commit history that they had, everything that this pat token has access to. They could literally see every action, which we never want, right? So hopefully this would give you an idea on how powerful these pat tokens are and how mindful we have to be whenever we store them. Or yeah, so here are a few more stuff that you could do. Like I won't run through that, but we'll get into the defense layer of it. But technically, like as you have the permissions on your pat token, it could technically have those like impact. Now let's go to the defense framework, right? So how till now we talked about uh, what would it mean, right, from an attacker standpoint, like how we could expose all this, but how can we make sure to defense, right? How do we make sure to secure? So here are some of the stuff we have researched, and these are some of the ways you could do. This is not the explicit list, but just keep this stuff in your mind whenever you are designing stuff or building your repos. Just try to double check or triple check you're following all these defense layers, right? So the very first defense layer is discovery and visibility. So how many non-human identities do you all think would live in a simple CI/CD repo in an enterprise? Right? Maybe tens, hundreds. You all think that might be the number. But in an ideal enterprise, right, at least there would be several hundreds to thousands of non-human identities in a single GitHub repo. So, well, yeah, this includes not humans, right? Machines, pipelines, bots, access tokens, all of these non-human identities. So without knowing how many number of non-human identities we have, how do we secure? So that's the problem that we have today. We do not know and have an idea of how many non-human identities that we have. So the defense layer 1 talks about shedding the light, right? Turning on that light and giving the visibility on to identify them, to have all these non-human identities bring into a centralized place. Do this periodically, discover them, and have these have the tags on these non-human identities. Whenever you create a non-human identity, have a purpose to it, right? And have an owner tied to it. So that way you can just easily flag whenever you find a non-human identity which is either stale or has no purpose to it. So the defense layer 1 should always be on the discovery and visibility of it, right? So make sure to run the secret scanning regularly, right? The example that we have seen, there might be accidental ways the secret could be deployed and pushed. So if you have a better secret scanning tools and have those scans run regularly, mistakes do happen. But with those tools in place, you could definitely find them and do the fix that's needed, right? So quickly on the defense layer 1, if we have to give an analogy to it and put it in a simple terms, whenever I clean my garage, right, I always find stuff which I never thought I had. And I surprise, like, what stuff do I have and do I really need? Why did I even get this, right? So that's the same analogy here. Make sure to discover all those, and whatever you think is not needed, get rid of those, and whatever you think are needed, just secure them and have this ownership tied to it. That's all about defense layer 1 that we wanted to emphasize. Now, coming to the defense layer 2, as we have seen, what a catastrophe a static secret would do, right? So wherever possible, make sure to replace that with OIDC tokens, right? So how many of you have ever seen AWS key or a secret that you have shared in a team, Slack, email, or stored in a notepad, right? So we never think about it. We just think that it's a one-time thing. No one would ever know unless an attack happens or it gets to you, right? You never know. So it's better be safe than sorry. So make sure and think twice before you share those secrets, and always think through and see, can't we just eliminate that secret and wherever possible federate it, right? This short-lived tokens would give you a lot flexibility on, like, even if the breach happens or that token exposes, you could control. You could hit the revoke endpoint, you could revoke those tokens and do stuff. And yeah, Defense Layer 2 emphasizes on that stuff. So if I have to put this into an analogy here, right? Think of it like you have a key to enter a house, right? Well, technically anyone could have that key. There's nothing proving that it's your house and only you are authorized to enter. But imagine there's this fancy house, right? Only with your Face ID, it would scan you and allow, right? That's what Defense Layer 2 is about in the OIDC tokens. So you could only enter your house if it proves that if it's either you or an approved party, and only for a certain period of time. So that's all on Defense Layer 2. And coming to Defense Layer 3, what we want to emphasize is least privilege, rotation, and integrity. Wherever possible, make sure to have least privilege. You don't have to tie all CI and CD together. You can segregate them. CI can have a different set of permissions and CD can have a different set of permissions. Make sure your prod and non-prod doesn't have same set of permissions, right? Wherever possible, look at for those least privileged stuff and try to secure those. Rotation is the key. We know sometimes it's hard to eliminate secrets. I know we are going through passwordless, but it's not easy to adapt and go, right? So I know there are times yet we would need a secret. Whenever you would need that, make sure you do rotate them very frequently. So similar to tokens, right? Which has short-lived, not that amount of frequency, but try to maintain a periodic rotation on your secrets and vault them securely, right? So that's on the Defense Layer 3, least privilege, rotation, and integrity. Integrity, make sure to sign all your requests, and only those signed requests, 6 stores and signatures, right? So that way you know, like, the integrity aspect of it is stored. So the outcome of the Defense Layer 3 would be reduced privilege footprint and the shorter compromise windows. And if we have to put into an analogy on the Defense Layer 3, it would be like a TSA agent sitting and checking you and your identity for you to able to enter into the airport and get to your flight, right? So that's all Defense Layer 3 about. And lastly, on the Defense Layer 4, governance. Man, I do have a very tough time on this, right? Coming from the security background of it, when I deal with different teams, they see security as a workaround, right? So security should be a lifestyle. It should not be a one team's responsibility. It should be a shared responsibility, right? Like, every team who is developing should have security embedded into it. So I can't emphasize more, coming from a security team and IAM team. Defense Layer 4 will be your strongest strength, governance, right? So make sure to have governance around your CI/CD. That's an important thing. And follow the NIST standards. There are standards out there, like how to secure your framework and pipelines. Make sure to follow those standards and develop your CI/CD and stuff that you are getting into. So yeah, putting Defense 4 into an analogy, it would be like you would go to your dentist, right? Have your regular checkups and all, so prevent major things. So that's what governance is all about. So, like I said, these are all the defense layers that you can try to adapt, but these are not just limited to it. We felt these are the 4 defense layers which we wanted to emphasize and make sure you all follow in your day-to-day practice. Well, that's about defenses. And quickly on the next frontier, AI agents. Again, right? Who would end the demo without talking AI and AI agents? So just with CI/CD, we had so many non-human identities. What's coming up next with AI agents? We have Copilot agents, we have bots, we have different LLM tools which want to connect your repos, open MRs, do reviews and stuff, right? Just be mindful about those. Make sure you are planned and prepared for the next frontier and have a plan in place, right? How do you tag identities to those? How do you make sure those LLMs and bots don't impersonate you and they have a clear definition, right? Just try to think about those stuff while you're designing or getting into your next agents. With this, I would like to thank each one and everyone, and over to you, Dhivya.